Okay. Hi again, everyone. If there's anybody new joining today, thank you for joining us. Sorry for some of the technical issues that we've had. My internet should be fine. I don't know why I just logged in. Maybe I pressed something. I don't know. But yeah, thank you for recording the session. As we said just before everything went a little downhill, that for us as bioinformaticists or anybody who's working in the biology side of things, although last week we just gave a bit of a glimpse of some of the important things that we need to learn when we do some scripting, such as working with strings and manipulating the string data type and numbers, for example. We know that for us as biologists, it's not really it's not a feasible way to go to always just print everything out of the screen and to store everything in little bit of variables, for example, to store an entire DNA string in a variable. But it's better to actually have data in files that we can store somewhere, being able to read in that files and do what we need to with that file, and then print out our data to another file. And we can always do things like testing, testing whether the script is doing what we want it to do by printing it out to our screen, which is also called standard out. You will see this sometimes. But it's far more important to, after that data goes to the screen and we can concur that it's doing what we want it to do, to be able to print that into a file that we can access any other time again. So Python does have some built-in functions and methods to help us to do exactly that. You recall that we worked with this DNA sequence. So for this, for the purpose of this little, or this chapter, we're going to pretend that this sequence has gotten significantly larger. Let's say, for example, that we've done some sequencing and we've been able to do some sequence alignment de novo, and we've been able to patch up. I'm going to close this other session so that this doesn't come up all the time, and we've been able to add extensive amount of nucleotides to this DNA sequence, which now we don't want to be able to just read out to somebody, but we want to be able to store it in a file, so that we don't make mistakes when you read it out to that person, do what we need to with that information, and then store that into another file. So how exactly will we be able to access this DNA? And Python's got this open function, and as I was saying earlier, that this open function basically takes two arguments. It will take the file name, and then a mode. And there are many different types of modes, but we will probably predominantly just use 4 of them, which we will see in this exercise. So just bear in mind that if you're only going to use the file name, that you then need your script that you're running to be in the same place where that file is. Otherwise, if it's not, the preferred way to do it is to then add the path of that file ahead of that file name. And then you would stipulate the mode. But as I was saying, that so these are the modes, and we're just looking at this one at the moment. So with some functions, you don't need to fill in any arguments, but with some functions, you have a default mode. And in this case, the default mode is the read mode. So this means that if you just add this part over here, the file name, and you don't add the R for read mode, that it's going to assume that you're opening it for reading. And then that's all you'll be able to do with a file, because that's default. This also means exactly the flip of that, in that if you've got a file called dna.txt and you open it, I've stored this in a variable name which shouldn't be unfamiliar to you. You can use the R and you won't have any errors printing that, but you can also, you don't necessarily need to put that R in, because it will automatically know that it's being open for reading. So the question I had earlier was, if I try to now print what is in here, like we do with most other variables, if I've opened this dna.txt file and I've stored it in the OpenDNA file variable name, that is intuitive, because it says to me that whatever is in this file, whatever is in this variable is probably an opened file. But why is it that I'm not able to print the data in this file? Not quite, Amarachi. Amarachi says you need to close first because the file is not closed. So the problem is here, this is not even able to read this. And so this is, let me run this, and then you can look at what message I'm getting. So it's giving me this. And the reason why it's giving me this, it's not really an error message, but it's telling me, it's actually not giving much information, but basically the reason why it can't print this is because this is a file object and the print function does not print file objects. So whereas in the previous chapters, where all we did was we opened a file or we created a variable name, we stored something in there and we could print it. Here, the data or the information in this variable OpenDNA file, so this variable here, is not in a format that the print statement can use in order to give us anything useful. So something else needs to be done to this file. So basically, when we open a file in read mode, what we're basically telling the system is just what you're planning on doing with that file. So you're saying it's ready to be read, but it's not being read. So I like to always think of it as if you in an office and you have a file in front of you, somebody hands you the file and says, read this. This is for reading. But that doesn't mean that you've opened, even though you might have opened the file, it's as if you're not really putting on your reading glasses here to read the file. You've just opened it, and you know that you're opening it because you're responsible for reading what's in the file. Now you can also open it because somebody gave you the duty of writing into the file. But if you're in default mode or using R, then you're only opening it to read the file. So you're basically just telling the system what you're about to do. It's almost also, like I said, like being in a doctor's office and when you have an appointment before and then you come there and the secretary's got everybody's files out for the doctor to read, but that doesn't mean that anybody has actually opened the files yet and read inside of it. So